To David Shoebridge.
Mr Deputy President, on behalf of the Greens, I'd like to indicate our very real concerns with the budget that was passed this week by the New South Wales Coalition Government. It's a surplus founded on a once-in-a-generation windfall from property taxes and asset sales that simply can't be repeated in future years. And indeed, if you look at the projections going forward, you'll see the government itself recognises that because it has failed to properly consider how to deliver equitable and broad taxing, that it will inevitably fall into surplus. They can't rely on continuing to sell the silverware indefinitely into the future. Everything that's not nailed down, many things that have been nailed down, has already been sold by this coalition government because of their ideological push to privatisation. And we do know that there's been an absence of smart investment in the education of our young people in particular, in our TAFE sector, in the emerging industries and the renewable energy future that's needed to secure this state into the future. If I could first of all deal with some of the details about the attacks on TAFE that we saw. Last financial year, we now know from the budget, saw TAFE underspend its budget by $269 million. And the cut in its forecast budget in this year's papers is a staggering $175 million from where it was last year. The amount of contestable public money available to for-profit vocational education training providers is increasing from $526 million that was spent last year. Shameful allocation to a privatisation agenda of vocational education training, to now a staggering $786 million in this coming financial year. More than $750 million being spent in the failed experiment with privatised vocational education training. And what have we got in return? Well, we've seen a 20% drop in the number of students with a disability just in last year. And we've seen a 12% drop in the number of Indigenous students enrolled in TAFE. Smart and skilled is not smart and skilled, it's dumb and dumber. And across TAFE, we are seeing falling student numbers. In 2014, there were more than 530,000 students enrolled in TAFE. That fell to just under 429,000 in 2015. And whilst the government predicts some very slight increase to 2016, standing here today, because of Smart and Skilled and the Coalition, there are 150,000 less students in TAFE because of the flawed contestability, the increased fees, and the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars sent to private providers. And we now know as well that last year an additional 499 full-time equivalent jobs were lost from TAFE. TAFE is under attack from this ideological push from the coalition government, and for those national members in this chamber, they should realise they're going to lose their regional TAFEs as this continues, unless we turn it around. When it comes to education, the Treasurer's announcement that there was some $942 million over 4 years for new and expanded schools, public schools, was greeted with a lack of critical review by large parts of the media, I might say. Because when you look at the government's own departmental reports, their own assessments of what is needed to deal with the surging public school population in Sydney and New South Wales, we know that what the government has spent is less than 1/3 of what will be needed over the next 4 years to deliver classrooms. And indeed, if this serious underspend in public education and in the necessary new public schools continues, well then, instead of meeting the necessary demand for about 23% increase in public school places by 2030, this coalition government, if it continues in these budget settings, then the necessary schools that are required to meet our school population by 2030 will not be built until 2064, 34 years after that last child has required their public school building. And it's not just what we've seen in education and TAFE. We are now seeing the squandering, the embarrassing squandering of money that's apparent over the next that will become apparent over the next 2 years from the failed Fit for the Future endeavour on local government. We now know that Mike Baird, Premier Baird, is planning to spend almost $600 million over the next 2 years to sack councils, remove democracy and appoint his hand-picked administrators in his continuing attack on local council. The cost of the Baird government's undemocratic forced amalgamation agenda is now finally being revealed. And New South Wales taxpayers, far from getting some $2 billion benefit over 20 years, in just 2 years, will be slugged $590 million to blow up their local councils, and reduce their say in their local democracy. A shameful and disgraceful waste of money on a grand scale. When it comes to our courts and our police and our justice system, we are seeing a bizarre misallocation of scarce tax dollars. $3.8 billion is being directed over the next 4 years from this government to build and staff 7,000 new prison beds and cells in the state. $3.8 billion going to new prisons, new and expanded prisons. That's $3.8 billion that hasn't been made available to build the schools that we need. That's $3.8 billion that isn't available to improve our hospitals and our public hospitals. That's $3.8 billion that isn't available to deal with the necessary public transport. That is $3.8 billion wasted because of the aggressive attack on civil liberties, upon the aggressive expansion of police powers, and the law and order auction that isn't just the fault of the coalition. Often that's engaged with as well by the New South Wales opposition. And one of the reasons we know that we've got a blowout in our prison population is because more and more prisoners are being held on remand because they can't get their day in court. There aren't enough judges, there aren't enough magistrates. So rather than deal with the shortfall in courts, what has this government done? Well, this government has had a further cut to the New South Wales court budget, $10 million taken out of the court budget, actually predicting less hearing days in the Supreme Court, less hearing days available in the District Court, less hearing days available in the local court, which will only blow out further the prison population, which we'll end up paying for. And because of that misallocation of resources, failing to put in enough judges and magistrates, we are going to see even more money squandered in the prison system. And meanwhile, there are further cuts to legal aid, another $2.8 million cut from legal aid, criminal law services, and $4 million from legal aid civil law services. And of course, the cuts in prison correctional education offerings, where this government is seeking to sack literally every qualified teacher in New South Wales prisons, is now becoming apparent, the effect of that in the budget papers, because we see the government is estimating that inmate participation in education programs will fall from 35% to just 28% over the budget term. This is a gross misallocation of money, and it shows just how wrong-headed the coalition's budget priorities are. And when it comes to planning, all we're seeing is money spent from by the New South Wales government to further remove community consultation on the largest, most impacting projects. They want to again halve the assessment time taken to assess state significant development, despite the fact that that's the development which has the biggest social impact, the biggest environment impact, and the biggest economic impact. And they want to cut the community out entirely. Far from returning planning powers to the communities, which is what this government said it wanted in 2011, the New South Wales taxpayers are actually paying the planning department to further reduce their ability to contribute and make submissions on planning proposals. And meanwhile, where else does the money go? Well, we're seeing $41 million given to the Greater Sydney Commission, headed by Lucy Turnbull, to allow Ms Turnbull and the Greater Sydney Commission not to talk with democratically elected councils about the future of Greater Sydney, but we're seeing $41 million allocated so that Ms Turnbull and the Greater Sydney Commission can talk with Mike Bedd's hand-picked administrators about reshaping the district plans and the planning future of New South Wales. $41 million to have one appointee talk with a bunch of other appointees and entirely cut the community out of the future of Sydney's planning. This budget is a grossly wasted opportunity. This budget is seeing the Baird coalition government selling the family silver, selling every single asset that they can put their hands on, and spending the money on sacking councils, on grossly inadequate allocation for our public schools, on further savaging TAFE, putting hundreds of millions of dollars more in for-profit private vocational education providers, in spending money to exclude the community from district planning through the undemocratic Greater Sydney Commission. In short, it's a budget that will fail the future of Sydney, it will fail the future of the regions, and it will fail the future of New South Wales.
The Minister.